Welcome back, everyone. In this video, we are going to leverage the isLoading inside of our state in order to show or hide a spinner for our category and our category preview component. The reason why we do so is because these components leverage the actual data we need to get back in order to show their content. So we want to have some kind of indicator for our different users so that they know that this fetch is in progress. So what I want you to do is go into your components folder and create the spinner component. Inside, we will have both a spinner.styles.jsx as well as a spinner.component.jsx. So for the styles, I want you to look inside your resources folder, get the style sheet, and paste it in. This is going to be a bunch of style components. So make sure that you import in styled components in order for this to work. As for the actual spinner component, let's import in the two different components that we have, the spinner overlay and the spinner container. So here, I'm going to import from our styles, and I want to import in the spinner container and the spinner overlay. The component itself is just a simple component, and all it renders is both a spinner overlay that contains the spinner container. Just a very simple component. Then we're going to export this out by default. And now what we're going to do is, depending on the isLoading value, we will conditionally render the actual component inside of category, or at least the relevant portion of it, or we're going to render the spinner. So to do that, what we'll need to do is create a new selector. So this selector is going to get us the value of isLoading. So I want to say select is categories loading, like this. Or we can even be a little bit more consistent and say categories is loading, select categories is loading. And this is going to be a selector. So we're going to use create selector. We're going to pass it select category reducer, which will give us the categories slice. And then all we're going to take off of this slice is the isLoading value. And that's what we're going to return. So now inside of our category component, we can use the useSelector so that we get isLoading. And then we need to import this in from our category selector as well. And with this isLoading value, we now have to either render this part of the entire component, or we can render the spinner. So let's bring that in as well. I'm going to import in spinner from components, spinner, spinner component. So looking at this, we know that at any given point, we must have the category. For them to have accessed this component, there must be some category value we have. So what we can do is we can say, okay, if isLoading is true, then what we're going to do is we are going to render the spinner component. If it's not true, then we're going to render the category container, like so. And now if we save this and we go to our application and we go into one of these and we refresh, there we see the loading spinner. So there we go. What we can also do now is we can add this spinner as well to our other component, which is our categories preview. So just like before, we need to bring in the spinner component. And what we also need is to bring in the appropriate selector. So select categories is loading. And now we just say const is loading is equal to use selector, passing select categories is loading. And then inside of here, we just check. I'm going to just separate these out so that it's easier for me to group this component like so. And I'm going to say is loading, yes, show the spinner, otherwise show this component. So now that I've saved this, let's go back here. Let's go to shop. Let's refresh so that we fetch. And there we go. Now that we have in this Thunk and the ability to check whether the loading state is present, we have a lot more flexibility in how we determine the user experience. Thanks to this isLoading ability to check now, it's a lot easier for us to segment out the user experience into a way where our component knows, hey, I'm just going to determine based off this Boolean whether or not I'm in a loading state or not. This is a very powerful pattern because essentially it does not matter if you have any asynchronous fetching happening. Because of Thunks now, we know whether or not we're in a loading state or not in a loading state. It's a lot easier to reason about and segment out the logic that we have in this flow that typically occurs throughout so many different web applications. One thing I do want you to notice though is that whenever you refresh, for a split second, you do see these components. And the reason for that is because we are caching those values inside of Redux Persist. Because now we have a loading spinner, we don't actually need to leverage Redux Persist for this categories preview anymore. Or not just the categories preview, but the categories in general. So what we can do now is we can say, hey, inside of persist config, really the main thing that we want to persist is the cart. That's really the primary benefit that we leverage when it comes to local storage persistence. There may be more. Maybe you want to store some other things as well. But given how we've architected the application and we think about the feature of the product that we're building, we don't want them to see anything that they don't need to see. We already have this loading spinner. We know we have to get categories from a separate database anyways. Now, when you refresh, you don't see it. You just see the loading spinner and then you see your content. And that's pretty much it. That's as simple as Redux Thunk is. It's really just this additional function that you now can pass instead that allows you to really set up this structure of success, start, and failures. If you're curious about what the failure looks like, we really haven't done anything with the error, but this might be where you log the error to something. You might want to handle it in your own way. The main thing is that you have it inside of your actual reducer now, your category reducer. If you want to test it, you can easily go inside of here, and all we need to do is just await a new error. So we could just say promise.reject like this, and we can throw a new error. And here we'll say new error, whoops, like that. So now if we refresh and we look, we see we got a fetch categories failed. And there's our error. We have not handled it, of course, but we can if we wanted to. But there we go. Now you understand how Thunks work. It seems a lot scarier than it is when you hear asynchronous side effect event handling inside of Redux. It sounds more intimidating than it is. Really all it is that now you have this middleware that allows you to pass functions that can get called. If you think about it, all we're saying is that, hey, I want an action that essentially is just an async await. And all I wanted to have access to is dispatch. And that's pretty much it. That's all Thunks are. And now that we understand Thunks, we can move on to the next topic. I'll see you in the next video.